Hi, I'm Kathryn Jean Lopez from National Review and the National Review Institute, and I'm so grateful to have Shemaiah Gonzalez with me. Shemaiah, you, as you know, are the author of Undaunted Joy, the revolutionary act of cultivating delight. And I have to say, when I first heard the title of this months and months ago, I just thought, well, that sounds like something we could use. The title itself is a win, and I think encourages people in and of itself. And a big point of the book is about encouraging people. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of the book and how, yeah, how it came to be?
Well, I'm one of those people who choose a word for the year.
Oh,
That's going
okay.
to be my word. And it
Now,
comes,
do you choose it or do you use one of those automated websites?
no, this is through prayer.
Okay.
I'll sit there and pray about it and journal about it and see where God's leading me.
Okay.
And I felt at the end of 2019 that my word was for 2020 was going to be joy. All signs pointed to joy. And I said, "Well, gosh, this is great. I'm all for it. This is going to be easy." And then 2020 happened, and
Uh,
I thought, oh, perhaps I was mistaken, and perhaps God was mistaken.
hmm.
And and I started taking walks down to Lake Washington. I live here in Seattle, and Lake Washington's about a mile from my house, and just watching the sunrise and praying. And I felt like God said, no, you're going to learn how to have joy through this, and you're going to show other people how. And so I started a Substack um, called Undaunted Joy, basically as a spiritual practice to just see where I could find joy in that week, even if it was difficult, and write about it in 500 words or less. So something really small and bite-sized, and send it out to my friends and people who already followed me from other writing, and and just see if anyone wanted to come along for the ride. And it turned out, yes, people did. So that was how it all started.
So about when during COVID did you start this?
I want to say, and now that you ask, I'm gonna have to look it up. I want to say like that summer, like
That
20.
summer. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Which
I
was
don't know if I
that
started
was
the
a good time
Substack.
to start doing something constructive if you hadn't already.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I am uncertain if I started the Substack at that point or if it was more just my own journaling
Sure.
and sharing it with friends via email or what. So now that you asked me, I'm gonna have to go back and look.
Well, so you the sunset, I think people can relate to, but the way you lay out your book is you have a chapter on something that brings joy, and you have naps are one of them, which
Yeah.
people can relate to too. Although your
This is the
discipline,
chair. This
well,
is the chair I nap
that's
in.
your chair, which not too comfortable, but just
Yeah.
comfortable enough, right?
Yes.
You explain in the book. But you also mention Costco and which was a little strange. And the story is even stranger. Um, but beautiful. How did you get to the to your list?
To the list that I made.
Yeah,
Well, it's just like, where do I find joy that week? And sometimes it's in really surprising places. And some are, like you said, strange. I have an unhinged mind, and I shared it with everyone in this book. I tried to write it as if I was writing it to my best friend who will love me no matter what. If she hears all the weird things in my head, she'll still like me. And so I said, you know what? I can only write this if I'm really honest. And so sometimes it was Costco. I love Costco became community to me during 2020 and 2021 because I had to go and buy groceries every week because I have teen sons and they're huge. And I would see the same people and I would see different people. And it became just a source of comfort and joy for me. And I mean, there's just bizarre things. Once you start looking for joy, even in the smallest of places, it just becomes contagious and you start to see abundance all over you. So I write about my fear of capybaras in the book. I mean, that's an odd chapter, but I was thinking about how funny it was that I get postcards from my friends of capybaras in the mail simply because they know that they frighten me and they think it would be funny to send me a picture of one, And that's that they love me that much. That's really great.
That they pay attention
Yes.
to things, to details, and that they take the time.
Yes. And of course, they're not all that quirky. There's also chapters that are a little more thoughtful and a little more theological, like the joy of accepting God's love, or the joy of wandering. So there's different, a little more thoughtful chapters as well.
And you also are very forthright about you haven't lived a life where you were conceived, or came out just chipper and joyful. Of course you've had suffering. Everyone has, everyone does. And then, there's that word that is quite popular, but it's quite popular for a reason, trauma. There's a you've been through a lot, as people are. And to talk about joy is to not say, oh, flighty is the word you use at one point in the book. People kind of associate sometimes a joyful person with a flighty person, or a person who's just not living in reality, because how can you be joyful all the time? But part of the point of your book is, because sometimes it's hard to see joy because of the suffering, it's important to work to see the joy and to make it a habit. We can develop good habits or bad habits. And this is one that can be transformational.
Yes. I know. Since I wrote this book and I've focused on joy so much, sometimes, of course, I have bad days, and I'll confide in someone in those bad days, and they said, "Well, just find the joy in it." And I said, "Two ways. I wouldn't minimize your hurting like that. And that's not what I'm trying to do at all with this. Yes, joy, it has not been something easy for me to find. I remember, uh, you know, back in the day when I was a kid, we didn't watch TV all the time, and we we read books and we talked. And I remember one time my
You had to
dad.
walk to another part of the room to use the telephone.
Oh my goodness, yes. I had to pull the cord into the bathroom so that I could have a little privacy
There you go.
and so I could talk to my friends. But I remember my father bringing home a personality test that he thought would be fun because there were three girls and we're all very different. And he thought it would be fun to have us do this personality test and kind of, encapsulate who we are. And I remember when I took the test, I came out as a melancholy choleric, whatever the regiment for that test was, but that was what I was called, a melancholy choleric. So obviously, this isn't something that has been easy for me. I'm a writer, for goodness sake. We're not known as being joyful people, but being people who look at detail and can see things, pay attention very closely. And I remember when that test said I was melancholy choleric, I said I was 12 or 13 at the time, and I thought to myself, yeah, that's about right. So no, it's not something that has been easy for me, but once I made it a practice and realized that I could not live the other way, um, it's very difficult to live in that space where you're always sad and you're always in this place of suffering. And there took, which I write a bit about in the book, there took some traumatic moments where I realized I needed to change my focus. And also, as a person of faith, joy is a fruit of the spirit. And They will know us by our love and our joy. And so often Christians are fairly grumpy or stoic, and not that I don't mind stoics. I've married one, and I'm glad that we're different. But there should be a sense of joy in our lives that comes across to other people. So
When you think of Good Friday, when you think of the cross, it's always so important to know that the resurrection is right around the corner. And I know a priest friend who always talks about it as one event, so that you never lose sight
yeah,
that yes, Christ dies, but he also rises, and Christianity isn't Christianity without the whole picture. And you have a chapter, I think, on Pollyanna,
yeah.
um, which I thought was really interesting because we do have this tendency to say, oh, she's a Pollyanna, because you try to see the good in things, or don't be so Pollyannish,
Yeah.
don't be so naive is the assumption. Um, but actually, the reality of that character is very different than the cultural adaptation of it.
Yes. It took me, I've saw the Disney movie when I was young. And the book is pretty similar, but takes you a little deeper into it. And it's quite short. I recommend it to everyone. It's like 90 pages and
Oh, wow.
it's so pleasant. You're going to come out with a smile on your face.
Yeah,
But
I
this,
think I've only seen the movie, which is
yeah,
strange because
90
I get
pages.
accused of being Pollyanna a lot in the the conventional way.
But she was a little girl who lost both of her parents by the time she's 11. And she loses her father, and in a matter of weeks, she's shipped off to an aunt who makes it very clear that she does not want her there and that she will not love her and that she's only taking her in because it's her duty. And there's this huge, beautiful house, and she puts her in the corner in a an attic room. And instead of being, oh, I'm a victim, oh, I'm sad about this. 11-year-old has the wherewithal that her parents instilled in her, to know that this isn't her identity. This, see, I'm gonna get teary. And and this little girl looks for the good in everything. And story upon story, she changes the whole town around her by being determined to look for good in the people around her who are grumpy and complaining and whining when they have so little to complain and whine about. And she does, she could. And also changes the attitude of the pastor in the town who's challenges him to be a spiritual leader to everyone and to lead them into goodness and the abundant life that Christ offers us. So yeah, I'd been called that before, and I thought, you know what, I need to spend a little time with this character and see what she's really about, and watch the movie again, and then read the book and realized, like so many characters, the names have been co-opted and changed into something that, you realize that people haven't really read the book if they're saying it this way, because she's remarkable.
And the result is to put an obstacle towards something that we really should try to be,
Yeah.
for our own sake and for the sake of others. I use this background, Life is a Gift. It was at the end of one of the March for Lives in January. It was left over on the ground, and I took a picture. It was one of the Catholic University of America placards. And anyway, yesterday, the March for Life announced that their theme for next year is Life as a Gift. And my first thought was, well, duh. Uh, well, of course, life is a gift, but um, it almost is necessary to be that basic, that simple, that fundamental, and be first of all, because things are so heated and so um there's so much confusion. There's so much fear, especially after Dobbs. There are so many lies in the media and elsewhere. There's a girl who came up to me, right, it would be the January after Dobbs happened. And it was at this great event that the David Network puts together on the Saturday after the March for Life. The David Network is a relatively new organization. It's Ivy League kids who initially it was who were pro-life, and it was around the March for Life. Then it became who are conservative, which kind of peeved me off a little bit. But until this one year that I was on a panel at the Museum of the Bible on pro-life issues, and I was kind of bitter about it because I wanted the whole thing to be about pro-life issues. Well, so fine. So I do my panel, and at the end, a girl from Columbia University comes up to me and she says, "Thank you. I had no idea. I had never heard some of the things that you said. I thought that I had to be pro-choice because I thought that pro-lifers wanted a pregnant woman who has cancer to die
Oh.
rather than be treated, because that
Mhm.
is some of the rhetoric that's out there. And so it is, I tell that story first of all because I did a mea culpa, because actually by broadening this event to maybe some more libertarian students or students who weren't sure where they were on pro-life issues, it actually became an opportunity that it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been otherwise. So there was that. Um, but also, it just reminded me, how even a smart kid at Columbia, in New York, um, eh, who theoretically has access to all the information, but sometimes being having access to all the information is a problem because it's
Yeah.
too much and it's not clear what's true and what's not. And anyway, but getting back to the idea that life is a gift, sometimes people might hear us say that. And uh, traditionally, the March for Life doesn't get a lot of coverage unless like Donald Trump shows up, and then it gets to be a different kind of coverage. Um, but um, but the idea that anyone's even covering outside of conservative institutions, the theme of the March for Life is probably not happening, right? Um, but um, but let's say the New York Times, noted that life is a gift was the March for Life, on the front page. Yeah, not going to happen. But let's say they did. The assumption some may make is that pro-lifers think, oh, life is easy. It's a gift. We always have to convey when we say life is a gift, it's because it's the most precious thing we have. That doesn't mean that it's easy. That doesn't mean that when we're talking about a single mother who doesn't have the support of her family, never mind the father of the child, we can say life is a gift, fully well knowing that this is going to be a hard struggle for her. And that's why we want to be there for her. And we have to make sure that women are inundated with resources and love, right? And that that at the heart, I think, is what your book is about. It's not about a political issue, but I would also argue that abortion isn't a political issue. We obviously it has to be a political issue, because that's just the nature of human life in communities, right? But when it becomes overly politicized, it hurts more than it harms very often. And ultimately we have to be able to see life as a gift if we're ever going to see joy, and if we're ever going to really in freedom with courage um uh, make the next step forward, frankly.
Yeah. And see each other,
Yeah.
you know? Um, yeah, I write Thank you for saying that. So many of what you just said resonated with me. Um, and I'm honored that you would look at my book as kind of a life as a gift opus, which it is, that was the turning point for me in this book is when my best friend took her life.
Mm.
I realized I could not live the way that I was, or that would be my fate as well. And just looking at everything from the smallest thing to the largest. And there is a chapter about how I make a big deal about my birthday every year. And because life is a gift, and a lot of people find that practice to be very narcissistic,
Mm.
but it's actually, it actually isn't even about me. It's that all these people in my life have been part of it and make my life so rich. For my birthday, I ask people to share a memory that we have together or a picture. And when those come back, usually on social media, but sometimes through the mail, I know you and I like to send mail a lot, and I'll get a stack. Um, and just to see all of those moments that we shared and how it's not about me, it's about the tapestry of this beautiful life that I think some people just forget to look at and notice it. They get so focused on something that makes them angry or miserable and spend far too much time on it. Um, and then you know, wonder why they're sad. So I hope that through these stories, even though some of them might be a little silly and some of them are a bit more thoughtful, just give the reader a lens at which to look through their own life at. And that's been my most favorite part of this book is talking to communities and having people come afterwards and telling me their own story, that they realized by either reading mine or hearing me read it out loud of something in their own life that they realize is a moment where God's shining through to them and trying to reveal himself, through the veil and saying, look, I've given you this and I want you to see it. And it's lovely and beautiful and abundant. So I hope that, yeah, I hope that people will see that.
That birthday thing I do think is so important, and I learned that. So I have this terrible habit of bringing every conversation back to abortion, so I apologize, but here I am. But I
Okay,
hope
well,
I
to
can.
say you only write about like three or four things your whole life, and that's one of yours.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I've learned from the Sisters of Life, these Catholic sisters who are dedicated to God, obviously, but also the sanctity of human life, is they celebrate birthdays like crazy. And part of the reason is because there are a lot of adults who haven't had a birthday celebrated for them, certainly in their adult lifetime, maybe ever. And so, how is a 22-year-old who's never had her birthday celebrated, supposed to welcome new life into the world? It's a simple matter of kind of tilling the fields of joy, right?
Yes, that
It
you're worth it, that you're loved, that you're important,
And
that
every single person is.
yeah, that you're a carrier of the Imago Dei. It's so funny because you just take it for granted, thinking, oh, everyone had a birthday cake.
Right. But no, no, not necessarily. And yeah, it's actually maybe the older we get, the more important it becomes too, you know. You may not want to be reminded of how old you are. That's okay. You can be 25 again, whatever. But
I love being 50. I love it. I'm so proud that I've made it this far and life is good. And my husband and God, of course, have given me more than I ever imagined I would be in the year 2025. I remember looking at it and thinking, oh, I'll be 50 that year. And my life is so much better than I could ever have imagined.
And gratitude really is a way to joy, right?
Yes. Yes, it's a small step to take. And you think it's, and I'm talking about really small things. Be thankful for the smallest things. I write in about being excited about stretchy trash bags. Uh, you
Right.
know, and it doesn't, the big stuff doesn't happen that often, you know? Um, a huge marker birthday or graduating from college or high school or having a baby or marriage or all the th markers that people tend to think of the big joyful moments in life.
But when
There's
you find that right size Ziploc bag,
yes, that could happen weekly.
exactly.
You know? So, I mean, the reality is like we've got to celebrate the smaller things. And so many people have talked about. I mean, this isn't new to me. I'm not the person who discovered it, but so many people talk about just enjoying those small moments. And when I started writing the book, I wondered if I could make a list of 100 things that didn't cost anything that are just out in the world that you notice. It's not that you have money so you're able to do this thing, or it's just that these things exist in the world. And so I started keeping a list on my table on my desk here as I was working on the other part of the book. And I told my family that I was working on it. And and then they started trying to help find things, until we could add it. And then, so I have this one chapter that's just a list of 100 things in the world that just exist and that we should notice. And they're small and large. I mean, like a dahlia. Well, I have dahlias in the back of me right here. I mean, the intricacy of these, I'm moving because I have another one.
Oh, wow.
I know. I'm spoiled. Pike Place Market had a dozen for 20 bucks, so
Oh,
I
wow.
got him. And I mean, dahlia's the intricacy of it's like a rose window in
Mm.
Notre Dame or something. It's like the universe in one little mathematical equation here. It's just amazing. So that's one of the things that I write. And it's like once you start seeing those little small things, it multiplies and abundance happens. So,
I
yeah.
travel a lot and love to notice at churches, at different churches, the windows, the statues, especially if you're in a place like New York where, melting pot, you've got your Irish church, your Polish church, and you've got the immigrants who came here and built the church. And so the window has the Italian and the Irish names and all the rest. And they built, they took joy in giving what little they had to build this church to honor God and have a place to worship him in this new world that they were in. And it really is a way to be connected to people in who came before and who were in this place for similar reasons, worshiping God. You mentioned earlier you were talking about how we need to be joyful. How you mentioned in particular this friend of yours, your best friend growing up, who took her own life later on in life, and um, having the realization that you can't make someone be joyful. You can't be responsible for somebody's joy. You can do what you can to encourage and witness yourself, but of course sometimes people people have mental illness that is really keeping them in the darkness. Sometimes there are other obstacles, whether it's psychological or whatever it is, um pain that is just too much. um but it is important. Well, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that, to know that you can't be anybody's savior. That's super important. Um, and um, to also feel free in the midst of suffering, to smile, to laugh. There was that ridiculous on social media backlash against Erica Kirk for laughing during a podcast and telling joyful stories. She is not required to walk around in black and remind everyone that her husband was just murdered. She is well aware her husband was murdered and the father of her children. And how on earth is she supposed to go forward without remembering the goodness, about seeing the goodness in the midst of this grave evil? Um, I thought the timing of the book was maybe providential in having it available at this time.
Yeah. Uh, when we tell stories about people that we love, it brings them back for a moment.
Yeah.
Um, I there's a chapter on this as well with my friend who took her life, where I have a dream about her, and it's as if she's there.
Mm.
And um, and at the end of that chapter, I talk about in Orthodox theology, when you tell stories, um, it's a little mini resurrection of the time when we'll be with our friend or family member in heaven. You know, we bring a little bit of them here and present when we tell those stories. That's why the end of Brothers Karamazov, with the little boy who died, and all of his friends sit around and tell stories about him. That's why that's such a beautiful moment. And we must do that. We can't stay in that place. We've got to have hope, and we've got to move on. And that so much of the book is about that. You must know sadness to know joy too. They're paired with each other. Um, you can't know one without the other. You need to know the difference between the two of them.
And I
So
think people sometimes feel like, and this was, I think there was a mix of things going on, but perhaps it was part of the commentary on poor Erica, and how she was having conversations and whatnot. Sometimes there's this feeling like we can't, so the concept of moving on, does that mean you're like forgetting the person? Or no, no. But actually today, as we're recording this, is my father's birthday. My father died 26 years ago. I could either cry that I can't bake him a birthday cake, or he couldn't eat it. I could bake it, I suppose. But or I could remember what a gift I had in him, right? And that's not to say I don't have days when I miss him a lot, or that I've forgotten him or don't love him anymore. But you've got to keep moving. And the goal is actually to get to heaven, right? The goal is not to be here forever, which is a really hard reality, especially when you're faced with the loss of someone or your own impending death. But remembering that and remembering why we're a people of hope, especially as Christians, right? It is about eternity, and it is about our creator who created us to be with him forever. And when we remember that, then people can we can be free of, this guilt or this sense that, all right, this is the way I'm supposed to behave or react, or and let people just grieve in their unique way.
grief comes out sideways if you don't tend to it. And part of it is telling stories and laughing. I mean, my goodness, isn't that what awake is sometimes? Like
Well,
just,
especially if you're Irish.
I mean, you've got to tell stories and laugh until you're crying
Yeah,
and crying until you're laughing. You know, that's what grief is.
laughing instead of crying, and yeah.
Yes. My eyes are filling with tears just thinking about it, you know, and to say that somebody needs to grieve a certain way, that's just horrible.
Well, one of going back to joy, though, again, one of the things I was struck by in when Charlie Kirk was murdered is watching old videos of him and seeing the joy he conveyed, the compassion also toward people he disagreed with, but also the joy. And I think that's why so many, and goodness knows young men need something to be attracted to
Yeah.
that's good, right? And so this young man talking about virtue and doing it in an attractive way, with an attractive family and all the rest, um, thanks be to God for that.
Yes. Yes. Agreed.
And also being able to convey your views with joy rather than with anger. And
Yeah.
obviously, there are a lot of serious issues. But we don't win people's hearts by hitting them over the head with what we believe is right. Um, there has to be an attractiveness. There has to be a sense that, I mean, so often converts to Christianity say, well, I want what she has, or they see something that they think, that could change my life. That I think is a lot of what we're seeing. There have been many articles and comments made about people being attracted to Catholicism in particular. Um, but also you saw a lot of joy in the Charlie Kirk memorial, for instance. What That's the stuff that makes converts,
Yeah.
a sense that, oh, there is more than this. And there's more than whatever I'm doom scrolling on my phone right now. And there's more than, yeah, this huge cross I'm carrying, whether it's financial or medical or emotional. There is more than that, and it's okay, like you said, to live in the reality of both the suffering and the joy and the
Yeah.
hope.
I tell stories about some people who were really suffering. Really- I mean, I talk about Corrie ten Boom and her sister in a concentration camp. And I mean, just the most horrific of spaces. And yet they looked for the smallest of things to be grateful for and led the other women in their group um, to that sense of hope and that sense of goodness in this awful place, and so I feel like so often people look at this world and, oh, it's so horrible. And it's like, it's not as bad as you think, you know? So I tried to tell some stories of some more microscopic, um, uh, closed in places that were horrible and how people chose still to look at goodness and to look at beauty and truth. And I think just we all want that, but we don't realize how much work it takes to bring into our life, to not doom scroll, to and, and it really just is small stuff, like, well, like what you do, just sending mail to people. I mean, just reaching out to someone else, and reminding them of what is true and good and beautiful. And just trying to incorporate this more into our life. There's flowers, there's a Van Gogh painting. Like, how can I focus on something beautiful, which is a window to God and the transcendent, instead of spending my time on things that make me feel disgusting and make me feel less human and angry. So,
um am I right that you have a chapter on Van Gogh's sunflowers? You combine the two
I
flowers.
do.
Yeah.
It's not this painting. This painting's my favorite of his, but I do write about Van Gogh's Sunflowers, which at the National Gallery in London, uh, I spent a full month in England by myself, and I'm married and have two children, and somehow this opened up that I was able to do this. And to have so much time by yourself and with God. was such a gift and such a blessing to just focus on what does joy really mean and what are the aspects of it. And one of those moments I found myself in the National Gallery because it's free. I was trying to do it as cheaply as possible. And I was in the National Gallery. And since I have had all this time, I just found myself slowing down a lot. And I just stood in the room where Van Gogh's Sunflowers is and just watched everyone for a while. And I saw how people would come into the room, look around the room, which has like 12 different amazing Impressionist paintings. And then they would see Van Gogh's Sunflowers and they'd go, "Aw." And they'd like walk right over to it. And it wasn't just one or three people. I was there for almost an hour. And yeah, I mean, just that luxury of being able to stand in one gallery for an hour and just observe things. But so many people were so drawn to this one painting. And I thought, my goodness, I need to look into this a bit more. And so I did some research, and I feel like Van Gogh was painting a happy moment in his life. Um, it's the same time he painted this painting of his room. He was, for the first time, he had a space of his own, a home of his own, and he was inviting Van Gogh to stay with him. And so he wanted to decorate, I'm sorry, Gauguin to stay with him to visit. And so he wanted to decorate Gauguin's room with tons of sunflower paintings. And he ended up painting, I think, 8 or 9 of them. And they're all yellow. I said, I, in the book, I said, I hesitate, if you haven't seen this painting, I hesitate to tell you what it looks like because it's only yellow and it's a picture of flowers, sunflowers, and they're dying. But it's magnificent. And it seems as if it's lit from behind,
Mm.
that like as if there's a little light behind. And I think it was because he was trying to capture joy and that color yellow, only using 3 hues of it. And just the joy that he felt. And this is a man who I don't think felt a lot of joy in his life.
Mm.
Um, and in this one moment he was, and he was trying to capture it. He wrote to his brother a lot about how how people can, I don't know what the word is, maybe where they can hear it in different sounds, they hear emotion or whatever.
Mm.
He sensed emotion in color. And so he talked about that when he wrote his brother. So I think that's what he was trying to do in it. So yes, the book goes in many different directions to just talking about Van Gogh for one chapter. Or I wonder too if you enjoyed the one about Mary and the Christ child statue that I saw at the Jesuit Center in London. That was the first week I was in London. I stayed with them. I was like, I have my own statue right by my door for a week of Mary and the Christ child, and it was so beautiful because I don't think I had ever seen them happy before.
Mm.
Portrayed in art as happy. It's always very stoic, very regal, which is of course. But then you think like, well, of course Mary was happy. Of course Jesus was happy. He was probably the most fun child, and they tickled each other and ran after each other and surprised each other around corners and the things that I do with my boys when they were little. And to think of Mary and Jesus in that way um, was really thrilling to me because I thought, well, of course. How did they change the world? They didn't change the world by being grumpy, which sometimes they in some paintings they're portrayed that way. It's like, no, it was their joy that reached out and called to other people to come and join them. So,
Now, it is important to say it's okay to be grumpy sometimes.
oh yes. Like I said.
Just yesterday, I think was the feast of Saint Jerome, who apparently had a temper problem, which is so consoling because we can all have temper problems, and I one I think mistake that we often fall into is thinking that saints have to be perfect, which is not the case
Well, my
because we are
favorite saint was
human.
Peter,
Well,
and
yes, Peter is
he
so
had quite a
consoling.
temper. I identify with him so much because I am hot-headed and I say stupid things and I do stupid things. And
I think most of us do. And how consoling is St. Paul, who persecuted Christians and was able to have a conversion and to live a completely different life. But also to have, I mean, poor St. Paul, who would go places and they'd ignore him and it's not like he was able to convert the world with no problem once he converted. Um, but again, a reminder of the suffering and the joy together that we inevitably live. I shouldn't say inevitably because we can choose not to have joy, right?
yeah,
Um,
we can live in all suffering if you want.
right, but it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and what is your best advice to someone who in their own life with loved ones, there are a lot of heavy things. Um, um, how do you delicately go forward in joy without being annoying
Yeah.
or forcing something that isn't quite right or not letting people have the freedom to experience life as they need to experience it?
Yeah. I think just accompaniment, I have several friends who are going through some really tough times in their life. One who lost her spouse, and another one who's suffering from some heavy depression. Um, we're to the point of being institutionalized for a bit. And it's not a sense of asking them to find their joy that day. I like to put it in a different way. Um, I just want to be present in their life, but I know sometimes taking a call is hard, or a Zoom, or me visiting them in person. They're not in my state, but asking them to share with me one beautiful thing that day. And sometimes it comes across my phone with just a picture, and it was the, or they might write a few words, but I think gently helping them to look for a bit of beauty. And sometimes it's hard, and we can only find one thing a day, but to grasp onto that, just like it's your life buoy, you know? Um, One friend sent a picture of a burrito because she got out of the house when it wasn't comfortable for her to do so, and she's grieving. And her grown children got her out of the house, and they went and had a burrito together. And just what all of that beautiful burrito meant to her, getting out of the house, being with people that she loved, having some good nourishment, you know in our family, when we're in a grumpy mood, we say outside is magic. Like, let's just go sit outside for 2 minutes, even if we hate it.
Right.
And sure enough, after 2 minutes, you feel like a different person. So that's usually my practical advice that I try to walk with people. Um, and I often just will call on the phone or do Zooms. And if no one wants to talk, I'll read to them. Sometimes it's hard to, I don't, if you're in that place, you don't want to talk about your problems. You don't want to talk about what's making you sad, or what you're grieving about. Um, so sometimes I'll just read. I like to read Chronicles of Narnia to people because It's so comforting. You're a kid all over again, you know? And you get to hear a good, simple story that captures your imagination and puts you in a different space. And you don't have to talk about the things that are bothering you, but you can let the literature speak for you in a way or give you comfort.
Do people receive that well?
I think so.
Mhm.
But I don't know. That might just someone told me the other day. They're like, "That's you, Shemaiah." Not,
But there is something about simply being present.
yeah.
Even if it seems a little goofy or you don't know how it's being received, you are spending time and that person knows that you're spending time, and you're also not forcing them to talk about unpleasant things. You're not burdening them with your life and challenges.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
need
there and choosing something beautiful. It's like if you can't always, but if you can get to a museum or if you can share a beautiful picture. I was so struck by when you said, at your birthday you have a pile. I mean, for somebody to go through the trouble of finding the picture, going to
Yeah.
CVS or whatever it is to print out the picture, to put, I am the queen of, you give me way too much credit on this mail thing, because I am the queen of buying postcards that I never send.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
There's so many beautiful postcards.
Well, there's that. My late friend Cato Burns, she always, we traveled a lot together, and she always was insistent we buy postcards because she wasn't into taking pictures as much as I was. So she would buy postcards. And the postcards probably look better than my pictures, but um but but my intention is always to send them to people.
Yeah.
But then what winds up happening is, 5 years later I randomly send someone a postcard from Rome and they think I'm in Rome, but we both get to look at something beautiful kind of
Or
randomly.
the writer Brian Doyle, who is a Northwest Catholic writer, who passed away a few years ago, one of his practices was to keep postcards on his desk. And if he was just thinking about someone, he would jot down just the smallest notes and send it out. And I interviewed many of his friends and family, and they talked about how they would get things in the mail all the time and
That's so
just
beautiful.
how loved they felt by that. So I actually have, I feel like, can't I just grab them? I think they're right here. Well, here's my stamps, but there's a stack of postcards in here somewhere that so that if I'm thinking about someone, it's also a practice that I do when I am grumpy. Instead
Okay.
of focusing instead of focusing on myself or focusing on the person that who I think's done me wrong and doesn't understand me, I think about someone who's been extraordinarily kind to me within that last week or within my life, and just jot them down a postcard and send it. And sometimes it doesn't say anything except for a quote. I'll just find a lovely quote and I'll write that because I don't have the words when I'm grumpy. And I'll write the quote and just put love Shemaiah, and just to let them know instead of focusing on myself. Someone said that the other day to me, a reader um, text me about how when we're grief or depression or suffering, we tend to go inward. And when the answer isn't there, we need to go
Mm.
outward and to not focus on ourselves anymore. And she had some wonderful St. Augustine quote that I will botch if I try to share it with you. But I really took that to heart in so many ways of some things that I'm going through right now too, where I'm like, no, the answer isn't to go inward, it's to focus outward on other people. Yeah.
And sometimes sharing something, just saying it out loud can be an enormous relief and release. And yes, draw you out of yourself and realize that, yeah, maybe this thing isn't the most important thing in the world, or this too will pass, or you're not alone in it,
Yes.
which is so important. Now, I get the impression, Shemaiah, that writing itself is joy for you.
Yes.
Has that
It's
always been the case?
difficult. There's a love-hate relationship with it.
Okay.
Um, but yes, when I'm able to articulate, especially a story, I am not I'm not a lofty writer. I'm not I don't know. I have a lot of friends who are just beautiful writers with great vocabulary and can can explain really intricate ideas, and I'm really a storyteller. I try to just tell stories of my life that you might connect with and that help people see um, he see God working with an ordinary life. And when I'm able to get that down in a beautiful way, I find it as worship. It's like something I lay at the altar and say thank you, you know. And in some ways that's helpful too because that means it doesn't have to be perfect because it's not going to be because I'm not perfect. Um, but that it's an act of worship I'm doing to try to find my way in this world. And I do think it's my vocation, whether writing down on paper or telling a story, just two people or in a group. Um, there was a lady who I went to a small Christian school in Southern California, and there was a lady who would come to our chapels and tell stories. She mostly told stories about missionaries who like worked in like deep dark Africa, and she would act them out. And she seemed ancient back then to me, but now I realize she was probably 50. And but she would act out the story and do different voices. Her name was Mrs. Dalkey. And I remember sitting there thinking, I want to be like Mrs. Dalkey one day and tell amazing stories. And I'm not going to go across in front of everyone, and I mean she would walk different and do different voices. I'm not that sort of storyteller, but I would like to be a storyteller that like her that help people to see God moving in ordinary life.
There is something remarkable about the gift of storytelling. My colleague Rick Brookhiser is a tremendous storyteller, and he's great at finding the new kid at National Review, the intern, taking him to lunch, telling him the stories, and he really brings American history to life, because that's sort of early American history is his thing, and it is a lot of fun. The other thing that's fun, and it's a twist on storytelling. Um, Raymond Arroyo from EWTN does wonderful impressions. So if you
Oh my
see him do
goodness.
Mother Angelica, so he'll tell a story about Mother Angelica, the founder of National Review, of EWTN. And I'm sorry, everything is National Review. No,
It's
um,
life.
really hysterical. And they're also, I cannot,
Are these online somewhere? Can one see them?
I don't know. I
Or is
think
this just something he does in private?
I've probably seen him do it in a public setting. I have known him for 1,000 years, so I've definitely seen them in private settings. But yeah, I think he does. And they're actually, actually am amazed sometimes. I find out, because one of the blessings in life is I know a lot of people, and um every once in a while someone I didn't expect will do an impression, and it is a neat, fun way of storytelling. It's a gift
That
I
used
don't
to
have.
be, it used to be a thing. I mean, I remember in like the 70s and 80s, it was much more, people would do impressions more often.
I
I
don't know
don't
if people are more more sensitive, concerned
Yeah.
that people won't take it the right way. I don't know if somebody when somebody does in some kind of in impression of me. I just the mere fact that they're thinking about me when they don't
Right.
have to, I think that's fantastic and surprising. And yeah. Um,
I think I'm a person one could draw like a character, a caricature of me quite easily, but I wonder if one to could do an impression of me. And I don't know. I should ask my kids.
I was
They'll
just gonna say that, ask your
Yeah, they would be
sons.
honest. And if you saw me waving, it was because my one of my sons just left for class and he out the window right behind where the camera is.
Now, is that the trumpet son?
Yes, it was my trumpet son. He came in to grab some lunch and then off to his next class. So,
You have
trumpet.
an amazing chapter about the son and the trumpet and being who you're made to be, basically.
Yes, yes. He is finding his place with the trumpet still, and that story was from the pandemic and early in the pandemic, where he would go and play trumpet for our neighbor who lives right down the street, who has since passed away.
Mm.
And she was definitely housebound for many reasons during that time. And he would play right on the street, and everyone's like, "Wow, we're all getting our 3 o'clock concert," because he would sort of like make it a daily thing. And there was a time where she was bedbound, and so he'd go on the side by the trash cans by her window and play there. But he's most himself when he's playing the trumpet, and it's just been beautiful to watch. And to, I mean, his whole life is that right now, and he's just 16.
Wow. And you are honest about this could have been like your kid having a drum set in the basement. Um,
Oh, the first few years were not pleasant. I read that it's like it was he would do these notes where you felt like all the dogs were barking in the neighborhood, where only they could hear them. And you're like, oh my goodness. Or you felt like Lord of the Rings, and it was like a call to battle. You're like, ah, it just set me on edge constantly. But now he's pretty good and it's it's like having our own house soundtrack. I actually have a violinist son too, so between the two of them, and they're always playing. They get up early. I returned from the gym this morning at 7:30. My trumpet player was already gone for trumpet for jazz practice before school, and my violinist was upstairs practicing scales before he went to school. So I love the soundtrack of my house. And I am not a musician. I wish that I was, and
that
I'm
is
not.
beautiful. Yeah, I'm not either, but to be able to appreciate it
Yes.
is a beautiful thing. To have it is a beautiful thing. And to be able to listen to something other than the news is a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, Shemaiah Gonzalez, the book is Undaunted Joy. What do you
Uh, yours
oh
is fading. I'll
yeah.
show you. And look at it. It says Shemaya's copy because I would get it mixed up with other people's copies
Oh,
at
that's fun.
events. And I was trying to find my notes. So it's got the cutest cover, I think.
It does. It does. It has a very joyful cover. And what do you hope people get out of this?
I hope that I hope that they'll put on the lens and have a happier and more joyful life. And also that they would just see God working in their personal life, but in the world as a whole as well. And that would give them hope.
And I do have to say, I think the book has a great mix of lighter and more serious, and it makes it very accessible and very doable as you're traveling, as you're wanting to maybe you try to spend 15 minutes reading every day, whatever it is. This is something that can be done, and everyone will be better off for it. So thank you so much. And I encourage people to get it for themselves, get it for as a gift. And we certainly can use more joy. Thank you, Shemaiah.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to talk with you.
Same here. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching and for passing this on and coming back. Thank you. Bye.